Hi everyone, this is Dr. Mike, and I'm going to take my glasses off so I don't have so much glare. Host of the free iTunes podcast, Psychiatric Secrets Revealed with Dr. Mike, but that's not why I'm here today. This is another Saving Savvy episode, and in this episode I'm going to give you my personal thoughts on the new Nikon D500. And they're personal thoughts because I'm a very, very long time D300 user, in this case a 300S, but I also have a 300. Very, very loyal to this camera. Really love this camera, even though I have some full frame DSLRs. And it really was sort of a hard decision to try this camera out because I'm one of these kind of golden retriever people that I'm very loyal and I'm very reliable, and this camera's been so good to me that I just kept on using it. And it's an awesome, awesome camera. So get the D500, and I have to say, honestly, it just blew me away. And it's such a great camera that I really think this is going to become a classic camera. This is going to be a camera that you're going to want. People say that it's semi-professional. The only thing that makes it semi-professional is that it's a crop sensor. And for me, that doesn't make any difference because you can take professional shots with a crop sensor camera. So what are some of the really outstanding features of this camera that a real photographer like me would use? One is its outstanding high ISO performance. It just is phenomenal, where when an older camera like the D300, 3200, that would be pushing it. This 12,800, no problem, and a lot of people are comfortable going much higher than that. Personal preference, of course. Really, really good low light performance. What else do I like about it? Well, it's lighter in weight. It's mostly magnesium, but it does have some composite or plastic in it that's reinforced with carbon fiber. I think that's there for weight, but also because you have all these antennas in there. You have Bluetooth, you have Wi-Fi, you have near-field communications, and all that has to have not magnesium to go through, right? Those radio waves, and so you have a little plastic on it, makes it lighter, makes it actually a little more comfortable to use. And speaking of comfort, it has the deeper grip that a lot of new Nikons have compared to, I can bring this one up here, if you can see the comparison, to the little bit shorter grip on the D300. And this is actually a lot more comfortable and a lot more controllable, and it feels more secure in your hand. It's definitely sharper. I think this particular D300 was sharp enough plenty for anything that I had to do, even professionally. So this was a very sharp camera, but without that anti-aliasing filter, this camera is even sharper in a noticeable way. Maybe less so if you're scaling things down and doing all of that, but it's very, very, very sharp. The D300 had wonderful focus. This has amazing focus. The focus points go pretty much across the entire sensor. It focuses under extremely low light. I had someone walk very quickly towards me, and although this isn't a scientific test, virtually 100% of the shots were in focus. Now, I understand if the person was moving around a field or something, I would have less luck, but still unbelievably good focus, even as an action camera. I think it has great controls. Now, the thing that I really, really loved about the D300 is that it had such good ergonomics and such good controls, and that everything was so accessible just with the click of a button or the press of a button compared to having to go through any sort of menu. Well, the D500 does all of that, plus it has a lot more customization, and it's great. So I would say for me, this was plenty good enough. This is plenty good enough, but some people might say that the D500 even has better ergonomics than the 300, which is saying a real lot. What else do I like about it? Well, there are a lot of features that I'm sort of discovering as I just go through using the camera. So for instance, today I was taking a shot of someone who was backlit. It's for a web page, and they were sitting against a panel. A friend of mine was sitting against a panel of windows, and so I really wanted to do an HDR image of him because I wanted the scenery out of the window also, and I wanted both to be properly exposed. And just going through the menus, this has an HDR mode. And so instead of having to take a bunch of pictures and then post-process them, I just put it in HDR mode, took the picture, it was fine. It was like, whoa. It has this amazing ability to self-adjust for the little aberrations that a lens might have in calibration. Instead of using a ruler and trying to figure out and adding pluses and minuses, you just press a couple of buttons and it will self-adjust for that particular lens. One of the great features, which should have been a feature on every Nikon camera, is it has the ability to set a high ISO value for your flash. Now, when you use a lot of Nikon cameras, and if you use the auto ISO function, what happens is when you take a flash picture, the camera thinks that it's really dark, so it pushes the ISO as high as you will allow it, which might be 3200, and it takes that flash at that high ISO, which is not what you want. So you always have to remember to turn off the auto ISO function, which you don't always remember. Well, this one has a separate menu item to adjust that, and so it's just not a problem. One thing it doesn't have is it doesn't have a pop-up flash. I know people say, oh, I never use it. Well, too bad for them. I love a pop-up flash, and I use them all the time because I'm not always shooting professionally. Sometimes I'm at a birthday party or at a family function, or I'm just out in the woods, and I want that fill flash. The 300 had it. This doesn't have it. Now, I get why it doesn't have it, because probably all those antenna and stuff have to be up here. So I get it. So I accept that, but I wish somehow they could squeeze one in. Certainly not a deal breaker. Other cool things, a tilt screen on a professional camera finally, right? On a Nikon, well, I guess I think the 750 has a tilt screen too, but a tilt screen on a camera is very, very durable. It's not a selfie screen, but you can touch it, you can expand your picture, you can scroll through pictures. It's not 100% functional, but it works pretty darn well, and the ability to tilt up and tilt down, once you kind of go that route, you never want to go back to a flat screen because it's just so convenient. Of course, the 4K video is supposed to be phenomenal. I haven't really checked that out yet. Most of the video work that I do, believe it or not, is 1080 or 720p even. I think the video I'm recording right now will be 720p. But I will check it out and probably try to post some video at 4K, or at least scale down 4K, just to demonstrate that in the future. So it does do 4K video. Of course, it has the microphone, the headphone jack, the stuff that you would expect. What do you sacrifice with this camera compared to a full frame camera? Perhaps a little bit of high ISO performance, but still this is going to be more than enough for most of us. Perhaps a little bit of bokeh, but you can certainly get good bokeh from an APS-C size sensor. Of course, if you're using a full frame lens, that lens will appear to be wider on a full frame camera because it's getting more of the image on that sensor. But you can get so many lenses now that are APS-C size lenses that really go down to very low focal lengths, and you can get pretty wide with them too. So that's not a deal breaker for me. And speaking of bargains, the great thing about these APS-C size cameras is that you can get quite excellent lenses that are significantly cheaper than if you're getting a lens that is designed for a full frame camera, because less glass. So, for instance, this is I've used this particular lens for years and years and years. This is a Sigma 17-50 constant aperture f2.8. I love this lens. I've used it for a lot of professional work. I've used it for a lot of personal work. It's relatively inexpensive. You can get this lens for around $400 or even $300 on eBay. I'm sure if you get one that's used, even less, but I would just buy a new one. Fantastic lens, cheap. Can't put this on an APS, on a full frame camera, because the circle of light is too small, but works great for a camera like this. So that's actually a bargain. And of course, with that crop sensor, you have a little more telephoto reach because the sensor is smaller and you're just looking at that center portion of the image that you would normally see on a full frame camera. So it's great for stuff like that too. So there's some advantages to these crop frame sensors. There are certainly many advantages to this camera. I would highly, highly recommend. Oh, one other thing, the dynamic range, I think really is definitely better on this camera than on most digital sensors that I've looked at. So I took a photo of a bronze statue. Normally that tonal gradation, the dynamic range is not very wide on a bronze statue, so you don't see a lot of definition. This camera did a phenomenal job showing definition. So would I recommend this camera? Absolutely. This is going to be a classic camera. Does it make me feel bad? Absolutely, because I'm a golden retriever and I'm very loyal to my D300 series cameras. In fact, my D300S I really love. I'm going to continue using this camera just because I'm so darn loyal, and since it's done such a good job for me, and I just can't sell it, actually, to be honest with you. So I'm going to continue using it, but I kind of think that the 500 is going to get a little more play in the camera bag. With that, I'd like to say have a great evening, and if you get some time, please give my podcast a listen. It's actually a different format now. I do the podcast now with my wife. I'm a psychiatrist. She's a PhD level clinical psychologist, and we just have a discussion kind of like around the kitchen table. So that's pretty interesting. Here we can agree and disagree about different things. So that you can find on iTunes. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. I really, really would appreciate that. If you'd like my channel, please subscribe to my channel. It's pretty diverse. And if you like Nikons, buy this 500. Take care.